Hello and welcome to our 2022 American Classic Travel Showcase. I'm your host JD Conroy, and on today's episode I'm going to take you from sea to shining sea to explore the best destinations to visit in America in 2022. Now, since you're tuning in to today's episode, I wanted to extend to you a special Tour TV discount. If you sign up for any of the tours that I discussed in this video today, by February 1st of 2022, you will save $200 per person on your reservation. This discount is only valid for new reservations. Now, before we get into our destinations, I wanted to tell you a little bit about American Classic Tours. American Classic was founded in 1988 by my dad, Joe Conroy. So we're a family-owned and operated business based out of Grayslake, Illinois, which is located in the northern suburbs of the Chicagoland area. And over the last 33 years, we've led thousands and thousands of travelers on all-inclusive guided tours to the most beautiful places in North America. And the first word I want to unpack here is all-inclusive. You hear this a lot in the travel industry, but what exactly does it mean to us here at American Classic Tours? Your tour will begin with a free home pickup right at your front door, and your limousine driver will bring you to the airport where you will be met curbside by an American Classic Tours staff member who will lead you inside to a private group airline check-in to meet your tour director and the rest of your group. So you'll be joined by an American Classic Tour director from the very beginning of your tour to the very end of your tour, and it's our tour director's job to make sure that your entire tour runs very smoothly to attend to any special needs you might have. And folks, one thing I can tell you is that we have the best tour directors in the industry, and I'm not just saying that because I'm one of them. We've got an awesome team. You'll love traveling with our tour directors. Together with your tour director and the rest of your group, you'll fly to your destination. And when we arrive at our destination, you'll see the best that it has to offer. From national parks to presidential libraries, our tours feature premier attractions. An important note here, all attractions, entertainment, and admission fees on our tours are included up front in the price of your tour. This is important to know because many other tour companies don't include everything up front. Again, we have no optional add-ons or inclusions. It's all included for you right up front, so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy your tour. And with our attractions, our goal is to give you a holistic view of the place you're visiting. Our tours feature history, nature, culture, wildlife, entertainment, scenic overlooks, and more. Now, to help us discover our destination, we'll be joined by multiple premier local guides on our journey. Your local guide is from the destination we're visiting. They're experts in that particular area, and they'll join us for a day, an afternoon, maybe sometimes multiple days at a time to give us that in-depth knowledge of the place we're visiting. Now, a hallmark of an American Classic Tour is we stay at very high quality hotels. To give you an idea of the type of hotel we stay at, if we're staying at a national brand, we stay at a lot of Marriott's and Westins, for example. But when we can, we like to stay at what we call experiential hotels, hotels that are attractions in and of themselves. So for example, when we go to New Orleans, we stay in the heart of the French Quarter at the historic Hotel Monteleone. When we go up to Mackinac Island, we stay at the lovely Grand Hotel. And when we visit Quebec, we stay at the luxurious Chateau Frontenac. Our tours feature fine dining. Most meals are included up front in the price of your tour. We like to eat at gourmet restaurants that are characteristic or unique to the areas that we're visiting. Also included in the price of your tour is luggage handling, which means when we arrive at our hotel, your luggage will be brought up to your room for you. So really, folks, the only time you deal with your luggage on the tour is when you take it out to your limo on the first day of the tour and when you bring it back inside from the limo on the last day of your tour. All of the tips, even for your motor coach driver and your tour director, are included up front in the price of your tour. Now, this is important to note because most other tour companies do not include all tips. And the reason we do is the last thing we want you to do when you're driving past a beautiful mountain or you're listening to an interesting guided tour of a historic city, the last thing we want you worrying about is looking down in your wallet trying to find a few bucks. We want you to really be immersed in the destination that you're visiting. You can also add travel insurance to your package. So folks, in short, we include more, and what we include is of the highest quality. But don't take our word for it. See what people are saying about American Classic Tours. We've had countless 5-star reviews on Facebook and Google. Here are a few examples. One more thing before we get into our tour preview, I wanted to tell you a little bit about our return to travel in 2021. Well, after a long 16 months on hold, we returned to travel at the very end of July of 2021. And since then, we've led 22 tours across to, many different destinations across North America. And folks, at American Classic Tours, I like to say, we're not just back and returned to travel, we're back and busier than ever. The last 4 months of 2021 were the busiest months in American Classic Tour history. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from our travelers that they're feeling a real sense of pent up, sort of travel demand. After many months of lockdowns and restrictions and kind of being at home, many people already in 2021 were ready to get out and see the world. Now, this concept that I'm talking about of pent-up travel demand, we expect that to be even greater in 2022. 2022 is definitely, it's already shaping up to be our busiest year ever. Many of our tours are already almost sold out. So if you're interested in making a reservation for any of these tours I talk about today, don't delay, call 847-548-3333 to make your reservation today. Okay, let's get on to our preview. Now folks, as an American, I'm somewhat ashamed to admit this, but I gotta say, without a doubt, the most beautiful place I have been to in North America is the Canadian Rockies. Now, if you take a look at this map, you'll get an idea of the structure of our itinerary. We'll fly into Calgary, and those green lines, those green dotted lines represent our first 5 days. We'll be seeing Canada's national parks via motor coach. Then the blue lines from Jasper to Kamloops and Kamloops to Vancouver represent 2 full days train rides on Rocky Mountaineers' luxurious train. Then the last couple days of our tour, we'll enjoy Vancouver and Victoria before we fly home. So let's take a look at our itinerary. We'll fly into Calgary. We'll embark on a scenic drive to the enchanting mountain town of Banff, where we'll stay for 2 nights. I mean, look at this photo. You'll have free time to explore this charming town with its boutique shops, delicious restaurants, and cozy coffee shops. We'll take a guided tour of Banff National Park. We'll see Moraine Lake and the Valley of the 10 Peaks, the beautiful Emerald Lake. We'll take a ride to the top of Sulphur Mountain aboard the Banff Gondola to enjoy this spectacular view. We'll explore Johnston Canyon. We'll visit the Fairmont Lake Louise, where we'll enjoy a gourmet lunch overlooking the lake. And of course, you'll have plenty of free time to walk along the unbelievable Lake Louise. Next, we'll journey from Banff to Jasper National Park. And on our way, we'll stop at the Columbia Ice Field, where we'll hop aboard the Snow Coach Ice Explorer to ride atop the Columbia Glacier. When we make it to the top of the glacier, you'll have a chance to get out, walk around atop the glacier. We'll take some photos at the Glacier Skywalk Observatory. We'll visit the Athabasca Falls, where you'll be standing right here taking your own version of this exact photo. We'll see Bow Lake before arriving to Jasper National Park. And I know you're probably asking yourself, looking at all these photos, okay, these are just super edited photos, they're Photoshopped, JD. No, these photos, when you get there in person, these glacial lakes actually pop fluorescent blues, greens, and turquoises. We'll take a boat cruise to Lake Moline, which is home to one of the world's most photogenic spots, Spirit Island, pictured here. Again, you'll be standing right here enjoying this amazing view for yourself. Folks, of all the places I've been, all the national parks in America, I've never seen more wildlife in one place than I saw at Jasper National Park. This video that you're watching here of this elk, I took this from our motor coach. We'll be on the lookout for elk, for bears, moose, bighorn sheep, and even lynx. That's right, 2 years ago when I was leading this tour, our group on our guided tour of Jasper saw a lynx. That's incredibly rare, so I definitely can't promise that you'll see lynx or that you'll see any of those animals specifically, but what I can promise you is that you will see a lot of wildlife on this tour. Next, we'll begin part 2 of our journey aboard the luxurious Rocky Mountaineer. This is a train ride of a lifetime. You'll see the rugged splendor of the Canadian wilderness, all from the comfort of Gold Leaf service. Now, the thing that makes the Gold Leaf service so special is the bi-level glass dome luxury coach for panoramic viewing. The best way to explain what this means is to show you this picture right here. Look at that. Do you see how the whole top of the coach is a glass dome? And this is so important because it allows you to look up to your left or to your right or just above you and see those beautiful white peaked mountain caps. As part of Gold Leaf service, you'll also have exclusive access to an outdoor viewing platform where you can step outside and breathe in that cool, crisp air of Western Canada. Gold Leaf service also offers 5-star dining experiences. And when I say 5-star dining, I mean it. It is top tier food, delicious. Breakfast and lunch are included each day on the train. But if that's not enough, they serve fresh coffee in the morning with warm scones, and throughout the day they serve snacks and wine and cheese and top shelf cocktails, all included. It's an amazing experience. And folks, while the signature cocktails and gourmet food are such a treat, the most important treat, or the best treat of this ride, is the splendor of the scenery that you'll enjoy. I'm going to show you a brief video made by our friends at Rocky Mountaineer to give you an idea of what you can expect from your luxury train excursion. So as you can see, the Rocky Mountaineer is a pretty amazing train excursion. The last few days of our tour will be staying in the striking, modern, and beautiful city of Vancouver. Of course, we'll be taking a guided tour. We'll also take a ferry boat ride over to the island of Victoria, which is known for its old Victorian charm. We'll see the Empress Hotel, and we'll visit the Bouchard Gardens. Now, this is a legendary gardens built on top of an old limestone quarry. And folks, I gotta say, these are hands down the most beautiful gardens I've ever been to. And folks, that's our Canadian Rockies tour. Journey on the world's most famous scenic highway to discover the magnificent California coast, featuring an unforgettable, endless panorama of Pacific coastline scenes. See California's towering coastal cliffs, enjoy views of the beautiful blue ocean expanse, and visit the Golden State's iconic cities and charming seaside villages as you make your California dream a reality on Highway 1. If you take a look at a map, you'll see the route we take on this tour. We'll journey hundreds of miles hugging the California coast for our entire tour. While this tour features internationally renowned cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, I think my favorite part of this tour is the charming small towns. It's the off the beaten path destinations. It's the unspoiled beauty of the Central California coast. This tour takes you back in time to experience what the Golden State was like before it became America's most populated state. We'll visit historic missions, horse ranches, and vineyards and wineries. Let's take a look at some of the highlights of this tour. We'll fly into San Francisco, where we'll see the city's iconic trolley cars, the crazy, curvy Lombard Street, the historic Nob Hill neighborhood, Chinatown, Fisherman's Wharf. We'll take a cruise on the San Francisco Bay, where we'll take in views of the city's skyline, the Old Bay Bridge, and the Golden Gate Bridge. Next, we'll journey to Monterey. I'll never forget, when I first visited Monterey, I kept having to pinch myself. I was like, I cannot believe real people actually live here. This place is like a fairy tale. It's just unbelievable. Monterey is home to the 17-mile drive along the world-famous Pebble Beach Golf Course and the picture-perfect Lone Cypress Tree. Next, we'll take a scenic ocean drive along Highway 1 through Big Sur, and Big Sur is perhaps the most photogenic spot in all of America. It is a premier postcard photo of the Pacific coast. It's situated perfectly where the mountains meet the sea. We'll take in the small town charm of San Luis Obispo, which is home to gorgeous hilly scenery, beautiful beaches, and scenic rolling vineyards known for producing tasty Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. While in San Luis Obispo, we'll visit the fanciful and pink Madonna Inn for a delicious dinner. We'll take a step back in time as we tour Flag Is Up Farms California Horse Ranch, which is internationally renowned for its successful performance horses and the world-famous horse whisperer Monty Roberts. We'll explore the fairy tale-like Danish town of Solvang. And one of my favorite highlights of this tour is a visit to Santa Barbara. Known as America's Riviera, Santa Barbara is distinctly Spanish in spirit. The architecture, specifically its red tile clay roofs, will make you feel as if you're walking through a Spanish town. The Santa Barbara County Courthouse and the old Mission Santa Barbara seem as if they were taken directly from Madrid. Along with its stunning architecture, Santa Barbara boasts sandy beaches lined with regal palm trees. Located just 90 miles north of Los Angeles, it's easy to see why this quiet town is where some of Hollywood's most famous stars like Oprah, Brad Pitt, Ellen DeGeneres have decided to build their secluded estates. If you're a history buff like me, you'll definitely want to visit the old Mission Santa Barbara. Established in 1786, this is California's quintessential historic mission. Next, we'll make our way to Los Angeles, where we'll see the famous Santa Monica Pier, which marks the end of Route 66. We'll take a guided tour of Paramount Studios to go behind the scenes to see how your favorite movies and TV shows have been made over the years. On a guided tour of Los Angeles, we'll see the famous Hollywood sign, the Hollywood Walk of Fame, the Disney Concert Hall, and more. So there you have it, folks. That's our tour to the California coast. Now, folks, this is my top pick for 2022. This is a tour that I personally am most excited for. This year, Rocky Mountaineer, the legendary Canadian rail company, is premiering their first American train excursion. This Rockies to Red Rocks tour features that excursion, an amazing 2-day journey from Denver to Glenwood Springs and then from Glenwood Springs to Moab. On your ride, you'll enjoy the luxury of the Rocky Mountaineer experience, the glass dome train car for panoramic viewing, experts providing narration throughout your ride, gourmet dining with breakfast and lunch included each day on the train, and signature cocktails and fine wines are included on your journey. I'm going to show you a brief video made by our friends at Rocky Mountaineer to give you an idea of what you can expect from your luxury train excursion.
An extraordinary place deserves an extraordinary way to see it. Our newest route, Rockies to the Red Rocks, brings 30 years of Rocky Mountaineers' world-class service to the stunning desert vistas of the American Southwest. Traveling from the vibrant Denver, Colorado, past some of nature's wonders, vast canyons, chromatic deserts, and panoramic views, to the mesmerizing red rock landscapes that twist through the bright blue sky. It's rail travel at its best. After all, if you're going to see an extraordinary place, you want an extraordinary way to see it.
So as you can see, the Rocky Mountaineer is a pretty amazing train excursion. Some other highlights of our tour include a guided tour of Denver, where we'll see the Colorado State Capitol building. We'll visit the Colorado Railroad Museum. We'll visit the small town of Moab, Utah, where we'll check into one of my favorite resorts, the Red Cliffs Lodge. The lodge sits right here perfectly on the bend of the Colorado River amidst these towering red cliffs. The lodge is home to a horse ranch, a winery, and the Moab Museum of Film and Western Heritage. Many of the classic westerns were shot in the Moab area, including the John Wayne movie Rio Grande. The next morning, we'll tour Arches National Park. It's named Arches National Park because it's home to over 2,000 natural sandstone arches. If you've ever seen a movie that is set on Mars, it was probably shot at Arches National Park. Arches is home to this incredible Martian-like landscape. Later that afternoon, we'll just head across the road to tour Canyonlands National Park. Now, if Arches is named for its arches, Canyonlands is named for its canyons. Canyonlands is home to these sweeping views of endless canyons. It's just a beautiful national park. That night, we'll head back to the Red Cliffs Lodge, where we'll enjoy a cowboy steak cookout right here. We'll enjoy our dinner at the lodge overlooking the Colorado River. Take a guided tour of Salt Lake City, where we'll learn about its fascinating history with the Mormons, Brigham Young, and the Great Migration. We'll learn all about this history as we tour Mormon Temple Square. We'll see the famous Mormon Temple, a beautiful structure, and we'll go inside the Mormon Tabernacle, home to the famous Mormon choir, to hear the building's world-class acoustics. We'll take a guided tour of Utah's state capitol building. Join us on our Rockies to Red Rocks tour with Rocky Mountaineer. When you think of New Orleans, what first comes to mind? Is it jazz music? Or Mardi Gras? Or maybe it's the crazy parties on Bourbon Street? While all of these things are important cultural symbols, New Orleans is more than just jazz music. It's more than Mardi Gras, and it's definitely more than just crazy parties on Bourbon Street. I would argue that New Orleans is America's most unique cultural city. Located at the mouth of the Mississippi River, New Orleans was of strategic importance as a military and trading port. And because of this fact, it was traded back and forth between nation states jockeying for access to this crucial port. New Orleans was founded in 1718 by French colonists who controlled the area until 1763, when, after the Treaty of Paris, the Spanish gained control of New Orleans. The Spanish controlled New Orleans until 1800, when it was ceded back to the French. In 1803, the French actually sold it to the United States as part of the Louisiana Purchase. Now, during this early colonial period, it wasn't just the French and Spanish who inhabited the city of New Orleans. Other cultures came and left their imprint on the city as well. The English were always in the mix, jockeying for this port, ruling it for brief periods, and they left their imprint on the city. Through the slave trade, cultural traditions of Africa made their way to New Orleans. Due to its proximity to the Caribbean, New Orleans has attracted many cultures from the Caribbean over the years. Another interesting twist in New Orleans colonial history came as a result again of the Treaty of Paris in 1763. The English gained control of the Canadian Maritime provinces, which at the time were known as Acadia, which were controlled by the French. There was a group of, I would say, former French colonists called the Acadians living there at that time. They kind of had developed their own culture. They were a very rugged, independent people, and they were not happy about this. They did not want to submit to British rule, so they were exiled or they left. They came down to America, and many of them came all the way down to Louisiana, which at the time was controlled by the French. So that's where the term Cajun came from. Acadian slowly morphed into Cajun. So as you can see, New Orleans is like the ultimate example of a melting pot. All of these cultures, French, Spanish, English, African, Caribbean, Acadian, and American, all blended together to create this new, vibrant culture. And today you can see living expressions of this melting pot first and foremost in New Orleans Cajun food, which mixes elements from traditional French, Spanish, and Caribbean cooking to create some tasty dishes like jambalaya, gumbo, and more. A second place where you can see the imprint all these different cultures left is in New Orleans architecture. Its famous French Quarter is home to beautiful French style of architecture. The city is spotted with Spanish balconies harkening back to the Spanish colonial period. As you travel across the city, you'll see some bright and colorful buildings characteristic of architecture in the Caribbean countries. On this tour, we'll be staying all 4 nights at the lovely and luxurious Hotel Monteleone in the heart of New Orleans. It's so nice to stay at only one hotel on a tour. You only have to unpack your bag once, making for a very relaxing experience that allows you to be fully immersed in the city you're visiting. The Hotel Monteleone is one of my favorite hotels we stay at. It's historic, it has lots of character, a great location, lovely accommodations, and it's home to the famous Carousel Bar. Now, if you look at lists of top things to do in New Orleans, the Carousel Bar is often near the top of the list. It's a revolving bar acting like a very slow merry-go-round, and its decor is quintessential New Orleans. Some highlights we'll take in on this trip include a mule-drawn carriage tour of the French Quarter, a guided tour of New Orleans featuring Jackson Square where we'll see the St. Louis Cathedral, New Orleans' famous above-ground cemeteries, and the beautiful antebellum mansions of New Orleans' Garden District. We'll take a dinner cruise on the Mississippi River aboard the SS Natchez, where we'll enjoy some classic New Orleans jazz music. We'll visit Blaine Kern Studios, where we'll learn how Mardi Gras floats are made, walk among towering figures of fantasy, marvel at the skill and technology that animate mega floats, and acquire an insider's appreciation of the history and traditions of Carnival. We'll enjoy beignets at the famous Café du Monde, savor lunch and a demonstration by Creole and Cajun experts who will teach New Orleans specialties and season them with history, tall tales, and trivia. We'll explore the Hoosma House, one of New Orleans' well-preserved plantation mansions. We'll visit the National Museum of World War II, one of the best museums in the entire country. That's our tour of America's most unique cultural city, New Orleans. If you're looking for unforgettable scenery, big open skies, and a step back in time to the Old West, you'll want to join us on our Black Hills and Badlands tour next year. Some highlights of this tour include Badlands National Park, where wind and water erosion have carved an eerie world of deep gorges, saw-edged spires, and grassy-topped buttes, creating a fabulous painted landscape. Hear about the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868, Custer's expedition to the Black Hills that started the gold rush of 1874, Jack McCall, Calamity Jane, and Potato Creek Johnny on a guided tour of the historic western town of Deadwood. Travel scenic byway 14A to Spearfish Canyon, where some scenes of the movie Dances with Wolves were filmed. View Bridal Veil Falls, Little Spearfish Falls, and Rough Lock Falls. Travel to Custer State Park and check into the State Park Game Lodge for a 4-night stay. This historic lodge served as a summer White House for Presidents Coolidge and Eisenhower. Take a buffalo jeep ride into the backcountry of Custer State Park to observe the largest buffalo herd in North America. Keep your eyes open for bighorn sheep, mountain goats, antelope, deer, elk, and turkey. And we'll visit the Crazy Horse Memorial. Next, we'll make our way to one of the most iconic places in America, truly a bucket list item, or should be a bucket list item for every American, and that is Mount Rushmore. And this tour also features a guided tour of the Black Hills, where you'll see Iron Mountain, Needles Highway, Keystone, Sylvan Lake, and more. Discover our nation's beautiful capital city during its most festive time of year, the National Cherry Blossom Festival. Seeing Washington, D.C. covered in cherry blossoms is a sight to behold. Together with our nation's beautiful monuments and memorials, they make for picture-perfect scenes. We'll see the Jefferson Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, and more. We'll also take a nightlight guided tour of Washington, D.C. to see the monuments beautifully lit up. We'll see the World War II Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, the Capitol Building, and more. Some other highlights we'll take in on this tour include a visit to Ford's Theater, the site where President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. We'll explore the National Museum of the Bible, a new state-of-the-art museum that explores the history of the Bible and how it has shaped American history. Next, you'll have an entire free day to explore the National Mall and visit any combination of the Smithsonian museums you'd like. You can choose from the National Museum of History, the Air and Space Museum, or the brand new Museum of African American History, or any combination of Smithsonian museums. We'll cruise on the Potomac River, and we'll take a guided tour of Mount Vernon, the estate of George Washington, where we'll learn about the life and times of our first president. Now, the last time I visited Mount Vernon, I learned this very interesting historical factoid that I wanted to share with all of you. Now, when guests would walk into George Washington's home, the first thing that they would see was this key hanging on the wall. Now, this key wasn't just any key, it was a very important key. Now, many of you are probably familiar with the name Marquis de Lafayette. He was a young French nobleman, and during the time of the American Revolution, he heard about this great fight for freedom, and he was so inspired that he came over to America, joined the American military to fight for the cause of freedom. And he quickly worked his way up the American military and started working personally with George Washington. Washington quickly grew to love the young man, and he became like a son to Washington. Now, as many of you know, Washington had no children of his own, so Lafayette was the closest thing George Washington ever had to a son. Now, a few years after the American Revolution had ended, there was another revolution that broke out in Lafayette's home country of France. And I guess he hadn't had his fill of revolutions yet, so he went back to his home country to fight in the French Revolution. And after the dust had settled, he got his hands on this key. And again, you're probably asking yourself, okay, what is this key? If you're familiar with the French Revolution, you probably know that it began with the famous storming of the Bastille. The Bastille was an old prison in the middle of Paris. And when its prisoners were let out, that marked the beginning of the French Revolution. And it was this key that opened the Bastille. Lafayette brought the key back to George Washington and he said, "George, you are the patriarch of liberty. You should hold the key to freedom." Now, isn't that just fascinating? It's those little factoids that you learn when you travel that really bring history to life. We'll take a guided tour of Arlington National Cemetery, which is beautiful in the spring with the cherry blossoms in full bloom. And the cornerstone, of course, of this itinerary is the National Cherry Blossom Festival. We'll enjoy our nation's premier springtime parade up close. Now, one of my favorite things about this tour is our dinner at Philomena's restaurant. Now, as a tour director, I'm really blessed to have eaten at top-tier restaurants all across the country as part of my job. And of all these great restaurants I've been to, Philomena's definitely is near the top. It's one of my favorite restaurants in the country. The owner of the restaurant was from a large Italian family, and the restaurant's ambiance was designed to reflect the family dinners she had growing up made by her Italian mother, Philomena. It is just amazing Italian food. You'll have to join us on this tour to try it for yourself. That's our tour to our nation's capital. There's something so special about the changing of seasons and the changing of nature's colors. If you love autumn and if you love fall foliage, you're definitely going to want to join us on this Autumn in the Adirondacks tour next year. Some highlights of this tour include a guided tour of Albany, where you'll see New York State's state capitol building. We'll take a guided tour of Saratoga Springs, a historian Victorian city known for its natural mineral springs and spas, American Revolutionary monuments and battlefields, and thoroughbred racing. We'll take cruises on two beautiful lakes, Lake Placid and Lake George. We'll take a guided tour of the West Point Military Academy. We'll learn about the life and times of our 32nd President Franklin D. Roosevelt at his home, gravesite, and library and presidential museum in Hyde Park, New York. While in Hyde Park, we'll also take a guided tour of the Vanderbilt Mansion overlooking the scenic Hudson River Valley. We'll take a scenic fall foliage train ride along mountain-lined banks of the Hudson River from Poughkeepsie to Manhattan. We'll spend the last couple of days of our tour in New York City, where we'll take in a Broadway show. We'll take in a guided tour of New York City, where we'll see Central Park, Fifth Avenue, St. Patrick's Cathedral, Wall Street, Times Square, and more. Another great option for you fall foliage lovers is our Rocky Coast of Maine tour. The cornerstone of this tour is Acadia National Park, and folks, Acadia is probably the best place in America to visit during the month of October. It's home to picture-perfect rocky coastline, and you're not gonna beat its beautiful fall color. This tour is also filled with charming coastal New England towns like Camden, Boothbay Harbor, Kennebunkport, Bar Harbor, Portland, and Portsmouth. We'll spend the last couple of days on this tour in Boston, where we'll tour the historic Freedom Trail to take in Boston's rich history. And if you're like me and you love lobster, you'll have a couple chances to have a lobster dinner on this tour. Coming next fall, we have our Columbia River Cruise, and I love this tour. I think the Columbia River Gorge is one of the most overlooked travel destinations in all of America. The Columbia River is America's most scenic river. It is home to towering green river bluffs, majestic mountain ranges, picturesque river views, and the best part of this tour is the vantage point through which we will take in all of this beauty. And that is the American Queen Steamboat Company's opulent American Empress, a beautiful cruise vessel which will be traveling along for this entire tour. The American Empress is known for its elegance. From its sophisticated lounges to its lovely dining areas, the American Empress takes you back in time to experience one of America's oldest travel traditions, the luxurious riverboat cruise. On board, you'll enjoy gourmet dining, world-class entertainment from the Empress's elegant show lounge. You can listen to lectures from the American Empress's resident riverlorian to learn about the river's history, wildlife, geology, and more. Take in the Columbia River's stunning scenery and wildlife from one of the Empress's outdoor decks. And of course, you'll enjoy comfortable accommodations from on board the ship. So I led this tour back in October of 2018, and one of my favorite memories from this tour was waking up each morning, grabbing my cup of coffee, and heading out to my private veranda balcony where I could sit and watch the sunrise over the beautiful Columbia River bluffs while I enjoyed my morning coffee. Let's take a look at a map of our tour. We'll fly into Portland and we'll stay just outside of Portland for our first night in Vancouver, Washington. The next day, we'll board the American Empress and we'll actually head west to the mouth of the Columbia River where the river meets the Pacific Ocean at Astoria. Then we'll begin our journey east on the river through Stevenson, the Dalles, and the Tri-Cities all the way to Clarkston, and from Clarkston we'll journey by land to Spokane, where we'll fly home. Some highlights of this tour include a guided tour of Portland, and Portland is a pretty city, and it's especially pretty at this time of year as the city's hills and bluffs are covered with colorful fall foliage. We'll visit Portland's Chinese Garden and its picturesque Portland Rose Garden. And of course, while we're in town, we'll have to try some of Portland's famous Voodoo Donuts. This Portland donut shop has become a sensation due to its creative and sometimes PG-13 donuts. We'll visit Astoria, Oregon. This small town is an absolute hidden gem. It sits where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean, and we'll go to the top of the landmark Astoria Column to get an amazing view of the mouth of the Columbia River. You'll be standing right here, taking this exact picture you see here on your own camera if you join us on this tour next year. Astoria is more than just pretty scenery though. It has a fascinating history. In 1805, Lewis and Clark and their expedition party, after a year of traversing across North America, they were making their way down the Columbia River. And as they neared the mouth of the Columbia River, they noticed a subtle tide. And I'm sure they looked at one another and were overcome with a feeling of euphoria, knowing that they were just miles away from their goal, from their destination of making it to the Pacific Ocean. Unfortunately for Lewis and Clark and the rest of their team, the euphoria did not last long. What they were hoping for when they arrived at the Pacific Ocean was that they would be picked up by a ship that would bring them home. Well, this turned out not to be the case. They were stuck in Astoria for the winter of 1805, and they spent this brutal winter at Fort Clatsop, which is pictured here, a small log wooden fort. And it was right here that Meriwether Lewis committed himself to writing in detail about their great expedition west, all the plants and animals they came across, and the different Native American tribes they met. As we journey back eastward on the river, we'll take in some awesome sights on our included premium shore excursions. We'll see Multnomah Falls, Mount Hood. We'll tour the Bonneville Lock and Dam, the region's first hydropower source. We'll travel through the Hood River Valley's scenic Fruit Loop. We'll visit the historic Bee Reactor and other important parts of the Manhattan Project National Historic Park in Richland. And we'll take in the Nez Perce National Historic Park before we travel to Spokane to fly home. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to say about this tour. Now, I've led 50 tours over the last 4 years at American Classic Tours, and in my conversations with so many of you over the last 4 years, it seems to me that there's two groups within our American Classic Travel family. There's a group of you who love cruising. In addition to going on land tours with us, you're big cruisers. And then there's another group of you who haven't really ever cruised or don't cruise very often. Well, I want to address both of these groups, okay? The first group, you cruisers, you who love to cruise, who go on maybe ocean cruises across the world or river cruises on Europe. If you've never done an American river cruise, I would highly recommend it. And like I said at the beginning of this presentation, there's never been a better time to try out an American river cruise. And I've talked to many people who have done both the European and the American river cruises, and they really like the American river cruises in addition to the ones they do in Europe. Now, the second group of people, all of you who have never cruised or don't cruise very often, I would recommend considering this tour. It's an amazing way to see this region of the country. So there you have it. That's our 2022 travel showcase. Now remember folks, if you sign up for any of these tours that I discussed in today's video, by February 1st of 2022, you'll receive a $200 per person discount on your tour. And also remember, space is going to go very fast. So if you're interested in signing up for any tour in 2022, call 847-548-3333 to make your reservation today before space runs out. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time on American Classic Tour TV.